sorors, and welcome to the Emerging Resilient Leaders Roundtable. My name is Eula Saxon Dean, and it is my pleasure to serve as your moderator for today's roundtable discussion. Sorors, let's face it, as African-American women, we have always had some awesome individuals in our midst. We have unique gifts and skills that define us as leaders. Yet the current society and organizations show a shortage of women leaders like us, with declining numbers, especially as we make an effort to move up the ladder. But you and I know, when given the opportunity, we are always prepared to demonstrate resilience, authenticity, and personal strengths to lead others in today's workplace. This afternoon, we hope to share current issues and concerns that we feel may be of importance to each one of you, as well as us. Our objective is to provide information that will help you sharpen your leadership skills, increase your ability to influence and motivate others, and be inspired by our industry trailblazers. We also hope that you will gain some leadership tips and tools to help prepare for leadership in your family and in your community. So go get those notepads and pens out, because I believe you're sure to pick up some tools and great nuggets as you continue your path to greatness. Now let's meet the leaders that we are honored to have with us this afternoon as we include these amazing sorors of Delta Beta Omega. And we applaud them for their extraordinary leadership and talent. It's going to be a wonderful experience for each one of us. We're so proud to call our guest sorors Florence Franklin, Senior Vice President, Wells Fargo Bank; Sonia Robinson, Area Vice President, State Farm Companies; Barbara Whye, Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion with Apple. Good afternoon, sorors, and welcome as our guests. So to get us started, I'm going to ask each one of you to do a self-introduction and give us a brief description of your leadership responsibilities.
Well, good afternoon, Sarah Eula, and I want to thank you for inviting me to participate on the Leadership Roundtable with these amazing women this afternoon. I am Florence Franklin, and I want to start with the most important facts about me. Number one, I'm a loving and dedicated wife, mother, sister, and daughter. I've been married to my husband, happily married to him for 27 years. We have one son who's a senior in high school. My family truly is my joy. I also happen to be a senior vice president with Wells Fargo in our corporate compliance organization. And while I've been with Wells for 16 years, I have 30 years of experience in regulatory financial services industry, with the past 25 focused on regulatory compliance. In my current role, I am head of compliance strategy and client services. I lead a team that is responsible for helping to set and execute the strategy for the compliance organization. Our strategy is focused on continuing to advise the business on gaining operational excellence and executing business activities to minimize regulatory exposure. In plain English, that means we're focused on how we advise our business to stay out of trouble with Congress, the regulators, and our customers.
Thank you again, Sarah Eula, and it's great to be here with this amazing cohort of leaders. And I'm also excited about all the great things that we're going to learn today. I'm Barbara Whye. I am the leader and vice president of inclusion and diversity at Apple. In that capacity, I lead 165,000 employees worldwide and really helping Apple live into its commitment to be a more inclusive company and drive also a more just world. I'm married to my funny husband, Demetrius, who keeps me going and is just a great partner for all of us. And I have one son, Carlton, who's also married to Faith. And I'm just delighted to be with all of you here today.
Yes, it is a pleasure to be here and engage with these phenomenal women. And so I thank you, Sonia Eula, for utilizing your talent and organizing such an amazing conversation. Greetings to all of our fabulous sorors. I am Sonia Robinson. I am the proud wife of a very devoted husband, Derek, for 27 years. I'm the mother of Sonya, who is a 20-year-old junior college student at Elon University. I'm also a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. In regards to my position, I am an area vice president for State Farm Insurance Companies, where I lead strategic growth efforts for 6 states, 1,400 State Farm agents, 38 sales leaders, and 3 VPs. I have been with State Farm for 29 years, and I've served in various leadership capacities for 22 years. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so very much, sorors. And what's so critical here, sorors, is that I want you to see that our sorors have this wide range of leadership activities, but they are family women. They are devoted to their children, their homes, their family. And it is important for us to see this picture because this is who we are. And so, Barbara, I'm going to ask that you can now take us down another path, because we do think that women bring balance to any leadership team that drives a deep push for defining the best decisions and execution for the organization. As a female leader, what are some specific leadership qualities that exemplify your greatest strengths?
It's such a great question. When I reflect on leadership, not only for myself, but the leaders that I actually want to grow and develop and also work for, those leaders know the way. In essence, they have a strong vision and are visionary. They go the way, meaning that they don't mind getting into the work and also helping others to partner to drive great results. And they actually show the way. So I think they also role model what is possible and also maybe stretch their teams beyond their abilities and showing them things that they could do for themselves that they didn't think possible. The other aspects for me as a leader is I like to have fun. We work really hard every day. And I like to bring just a good sense of humor to every room that I go into. And you probably will pick up on some of that as we have this conversation today. But I think it's as important as leaders to be able to connect with people. And sometimes humor can help us drive that connection.
Thank you, Barbara. I certainly pick up on that energy and humor already. Sonya, what do you think that they would be describing you as around the water cooler at State Farm in terms of strengths?
You know, I love this question because I think there's probably so many similarities among all of us. But, you know, the first thing I would say if they were discussing me around the water cooler is they would probably say she's very authentic. I think that's a very important leadership quality and it's a strength, is showing your authenticity. And I think sometimes, especially for Black women, there's a fear to bring your true self to work. But at least in my experiences, I can't be anyone but myself. And I think when you do lead with your authentic self, that you demonstrate transparency and honesty, which in my experience has really fostered this culture of trust and fellowship. And I think the reason it does that is because when you show your true self, you show all your fabulousness, right? But you also show your flaws. And when you show your flaws, it's amazing how people forgive you, but they also feel comfortable bringing their true selves to the workplace. And that's when we're at our best. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. And Florence, I think we're going to follow right up with you in terms of finding that opportunity to demonstrate trust. What's an example where you think you've had to exhibit that strength as a quality?
I add to Sarah Barbara and Sarah Sonya, because humor, I always lead with humor. And when I came into corporate America, I had to learn to tap down my humor and figure out when to use it in the right places. And being an authentic leader, that is like number one. that is actually what I want everyone to say about me, no matter if it's leadership, engagement, just being authentic, because we just have to learn to be comfortable with who we are and to lead with that. So I will tell you, opportunities to show and lead with trust. It's just in the day-to-day and allowing individuals to be themselves. When I came along in my career, I really didn't have role models that I could dial up and have honest dialogue with. And so I had to learn how to navigate, through different situations. And I have the saying, I may forget to bring God to work, but I'm so glad he doesn't forget to come. Because when I'm in these situations, I have to lean on him, right, to help guide me through this. And so what I've learned is that I allow my team members, or just anyone that I mentor, to be as authentic as they need to be, to speak as plainly as they need to be able to articulate what it is they're experiencing at work. And then my role is to listen and then to guide and advise and give them that realistic feedback to help them be successful. So that's what I do in my day-to-day. And so I'm really, I love, and I'm just being candid, I love the way I lead. I love because I know that I am making a difference in someone else's life and that I am leaving a legacy of how to lead, being your authentic self, allowing space, a safe space for team members, and just really helping team members really to understand what it takes to be successful.
Thank you. So, Roz, I want to push this concept a little further in terms of being your authentic self, because I know as younger women, we've gotten all of this training, we've gone to workshops, we've gotten certifications, and for some, we've even gotten PhDs and law degrees by the time we're 25. And we're just bubbling over. And we want everyone to feel and see that we've got all of this. But yet you're just saying, bring my authentic self. So Barbara, help me a little bit on how to, I don't know if it's tone it down, but help me get that authenticity for a second here.
Yes, I think the way I think about authenticity, a lot of it is like quieting. It starts inside out. So I think first and foremost, having the confidence in yourself and also knowing what's important to you, what's at stake for the meetings that we're also in, and how best to bring your voice to those issues. So I think when I think about bringing myself to these challenges that are in a room or to the workforce, a lot of that resides in courage. It takes a courageous spirit to be able to bring the best of yourself into that room. And so what I try and think about, even in my roles, just modulating where I want to be to make the conversation on the other side get better. So there are certain things that I may not bring into the environment, or I may not bring into that particular conversation, because I'm constantly modulating for what's best to bring into this particular conversation that can move and or influence the direction that we need to head. So I think there's a bit of intentionality around authenticity as well, that I think is also super important for us to bring into these conversations.
Great, thank you. And I think that now just leads us into this concept of how we lead differently, because we know that there is a vast difference between the leadership skills of men and women. So, Sonya, how do you think your skills differ from some of the men that you have to interact with in the workplace?
Yeah, and I think I'll kind of continue and maybe lead into that question with this theme of being your authentic self, because we know that also being your authentic self may not always be appreciated or understood by everyone, which I think is why so many women of color, particularly women of color, are hesitant to bring their true self to the business environment, right? And so as I think about my career, there were absolutely times in my career where I did not feel that my voice was heard, nor was my voice appreciated. I clearly recall times when I would express an opinion or a direction that would fall upon deaf ears. And then seconds later, a male counterpart would express that same thought and was heard not only heard, but was applauded. And so I kind of have a joke with some of my female colleagues. I said, I call that selective hearing. But instead of shrinking back, my voice just got stronger, right? And I would come to each meeting even more prepared with even stronger ideas. I would follow up with those ideas that were expressed with a very strategic plan and results, because you can ignore opinions, but you cannot ignore facts, and you definitely cannot ignore results. And so I think about that, how that kind of helped establish my credibility and my brand, and helped me to overcome that barrier that so many of us, I'm sure, have experienced in our careers. The thing is, don't use that as an excuse. I didn't use it as an excuse to stifle my career. I owned it, and I used it as an excuse to springboard my career.
Well, I'm in a unique field in compliance, where every day I'm combating with someone, right? Because we are often telling the business things they don't want to hear. We're trying to guide and advise them on what they need to do. So we often come into a room where they don't want to hear what we have to say, right? And it really goes back to facts, because if you're able to present, here are the scenarios of what will happen, and demonstrate that it's happening at other institutions where, and again, in my situation, where regulators are coming in and citing these institutions for things that we know are happening in our space, that they need to, and they have to listen to the advice that we're providing. So you do have to lead with facts, right? And be able to demonstrate, that you are bringing value to the conversation to really make a difference to the organization.
Great. I just think we're picking up on some great information here to help strengthen us in the workplace. And so I'm going to continue on this train of thought because I think Sonya really put us in, Florence put us in a very good place of preparation. And underneath it all, I hear this underlying tone of you got to be prepared, and you prepare yourself. So, Barbara, I'm just going to ask you, in terms of your preparation, who inspired you, and did you model yourself after anyone? Who do you call on for help?
Yeah, I have to go back to Florence's comment about the data. And we often say that for engineers, we don't speak English, we speak data. And I think it's so important for us to highlight not only the preparation, but the mark of a true leader is they know the data. And they actually can double click on multiple challenges that they may be experiencing or their organization is experiencing. There are many things to delegate, but knowing the business of your data isn't one that we should delegate as leaders. We should always make sure that we have the ability to not only be prepared with the data and know the data, but to also take some of the insights from that data that Sarah Florence has talked about in terms of going into those rooms. Now, in terms of inspiration, for me, that goes back to my family. I'm 8 of 8 kids. Neither of my parents had the opportunity to attend college, wasn't actually able to finish high school. Yet, like so many of us that grew up in the segregated South, our parents instilled in us why education was perceived at that time to be the tool to really a better future and a passport to a better future. I think that's still very much true today. I just think the level of it has changed. So high school was important back then, college. Now I think it's also the continuous learning mindset. So I would have to say that my mother and also my siblings, my brothers inspired me to go after engineering. But I have many data points of inspiration. Many of the women on this call continue to inspire me every day to bring my best self. And I think we have to just start making sure you don't have one point of inspiration, but have multiple points of inspiration.
And can I add to that just a little? Because sometimes the inspiration is a bad manager. To be candid. I had a situation where I had a manager, no matter what we put in front of her, it was never good enough. And, I felt like I was bringing my A game, to her, but she would always have feedback. And then I had to just pull up with her and say, look, we are providing you quality work. Help me understand, what the problem is. And her feedback to me is that she perceived herself to be an engaged manager. So she was always going to give feedback no matter what we put in front of her. And that really released something in me because I knew, look, I'm still going to give her my A. I know I'm going to get feedback, and I just accept the feedback as a gift. And working for her helped me really to take my game to my A++ game. And I had to learn not to take it personally, but she was really just inspiring me to do better. And so sometimes you're in these situations where you don't understand why your manager is being so hard, but it really is about trying to make what you're doing, what you're producing, A+. It doesn't have to always be A. So I think that's really important, that inspiration can come from so many different places.
Sonia, I'd like for you to even add on top of this, because I think that you shared that you would constantly go back and do your work and come back. So talk to us a little bit more about how you pushed yourself through those situations.
I think it goes back to a leadership trait called resilience. I come from a long line of men and women that were resilient. And I always tell people, my family, they overcame much more than corporate America, much more. And so I think, we all are built of grit. And so I know me. I've always had confidence in who I am and what I can contribute and bring to the table. Thank God that my mom and dad instilled that in me. And so I never approached the workplace with fear. And of course, I've been knocked down many, many, many times. Of course, I have flaws. Of course, I've made mistakes. What I've always tried to do is learn from those mistakes. The biggest thing is no one ever intimidated me. To me, it was more fuel added to the fire because I had confidence in what I could bring to the project, to the organization, how I could contribute to results. And I just pushed myself to be better because I would never blame the other. I would always say, well, you know what, I must not have articulated myself appropriately, or I've got to go back and bring stronger data. Sorry, Barbara. Let me repeat that. Stronger data, Sonia Barbara. Stronger facts, Sonia Florence. I need to be more prepared because apparently it didn't land the way I needed it to land. And I think that resilience, when they see that constant resilience and it's supported by results, it's really hard to ignore that.
So, Florence, do you think that you receive greater resistance from men or from women? I know in your earlier comment, you mentioned a female leader. Talk to us about how the sexes work with you.
I'm gonna take a little bit of different approach to this because I think, again, I'm in compliance. So I get resistance from men, women, whomever. Anytime they see me coming, there's resistance. And I learned early in my career because I knew that my team members would be facing that same resistance. How do I make sure I support them to give them the courage that they need to continue doing that? So I think it's really important as a leader that, again, we talked about being authentic, but it's also how do you support and enable your team members, right? So that as they are delivering that bad news or they're going in with their facts, how do you make sure they know you have their back no matter what, right? And so for me, it's this focus on making sure that my team members produce quality because our name, our reputation is going to be on the line anytime we go in with, we're giving advice. They make sure that they are prepared and that no matter what happens in that meeting, when they come out of that meeting, they know that I'm going to support them and the other managers are going to support them. So resistance is just a part of our natural activity. It is about how you wrap your arms around your team members to make sure they know that you have their back and they're supported so that they can continue to go back in there and keep fighting to do the right thing for the company.
I think that's a perfect response to kind of help take us into this next section of balance. When you all started your introduction, you talked about all of the types of hats you wear in your household. But even between the household, the community, and the workplace, you've got to find some balance in terms of your life and your work responsibility. So I want to know how you find balance, and also want to know what's your favorite act of renewal. How do you renew yourself?
I'll get started on that one. Happy to talk about balance and the concept of balance and all those good things. So a leader once told me to aim at the end of the week to break even with my company, where I've given them all the goodness for the week and they've given me all the goodness for the week. And so I find that to be very difficult to do on some weeks, easier to do on other weeks. So the way I think about balance is I have a pie and I'm constantly conscious of how big that slice is for work and how big that slice is for me and my family. And I try and keep that in balance as best I can. It's not easy every day. But the best way for us as leaders to be able to really do it is to master this simple word, 2 letters, no. Saying no for me, because I like to make sure that people are taken care of. I am multidimensional in that I'm working on a PhD, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I also have a very big job. So I've had to learn to master the art of saying no and being really shrewd about how best to say no. Not sometimes it sounds like no, and this is just not what I do. No, this is something that I do, but I don't have the space and the capability to do it right now. Or there's a better person than me who you should be reaching out to do this. And so I've gotten very, really, what I would describe as very detail oriented about my own personal space as I am about Apple's work activities. And people don't like it sometimes. So I want to give you a warning if you haven't started this. When you do say no to people, they don't like it all the time, but you have an obligation to yourself. And I do believe that saying no will ultimately accelerate your progress towards being in balance or not being in balance. So say no more often, particularly if you're very shrewd about what you want to accomplish and you're on a tight timeline for either your personal space or on the job.
I have to chime in because I recently celebrated a milestone birthday, and Sora Barbara gave me that advice. Just say no. That is really important, critical advice, because I think we all find sometimes it's difficult. We want to do everything. We want to help everyone. We want to be servant leaders. And so I still have that card. I try to remind myself of that. But I have a very similar perspective in regards to balance. And I have been searching for balance for 29 years. It's like finding a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You will not find balance. And so I came to the conclusion that it's really not balance, it's harmony. You have to find harmony in your life. And the way I look at it, I have to prioritize what's most important to me. The most important thing to me is God. That's my faith is the most important thing. And then my family. My family is the most important thing to me after God. After my family, then it's my profession. And so I had to look at it like, how do I establish harmony? How do I integrate as in my prioritization, my profession into my family and my faith? And if you look at it from that perspective and you properly prioritize, then you begin to establish these non-negotiables. There are non-negotiables that I just will not miss. And if you work for a company that understands that, and I'm very fortunate to work for a company that does understand the importance of family, then there are going to be those times that I may have to miss that meeting because I am not going to miss my daughter's graduation. I'm not going to miss my grandmother's 90th birthday party, things that you can never recapture. You can't get those moments back. But I tell you what, I'll do, State Farm, is that for the opportunity that I get to spend with my family, you'll have a whole season of my dedication and driving results. And so when you said something, Barbara, about this timing, there are seasons, right? There are seasons. There may be weeks that I'm working 12-hour days because I'm working on a particular initiative. And then there'll be a week where I'll spend a lot of time with my family so I can make up for that. So I would just say take the lens towards harmony opposed to balance, because balance is very challenging to accomplish.
Thank you so very much. I mean, I'm sharing and learning even at this stage of the game, because I still have family as well, even though I'm not a working full-time career woman anymore. But I choose to volunteer, and you still have to find that harmony. Florence, I know you and I have had conversations about
I have
the
a
need.
question.
Go ahead.
I really do not believe in balance, if we're going to be honest about it. We all have, 27, 29, 30-year careers. And we have to remember the audience that we're speaking to. A lot of these young ladies are just starting in their careers, and they're not going to have some of the same choices, right? That we say can't attend the meeting, say no. If they are career-minded women, they're going to spend more time focused on their jobs, right? And so I don't believe that there's a such thing as a balance, but what I believe is that they have to find a mix of what I call a full life experience, right? So you are going to work the 12 plus hours, right, a day. You're going to work on the weekends. You're sometimes going to work on your vacation. Let's just be real. This is what we've experienced over our careers to get to where we are. And now that where we are, we can say, no, I just took actually my first vacation since working at Wells Fargo, and I did not get online. And that was in July. The one in June, I was online. So, you can sometimes, but you can't. But I think it's really important that if you truly are going to be focused on your career and moving up, you have to understand you're not going to have balance. I unfortunately missed 3 of my son's birthdays. I missed his 7th, his 8th, and his 15th because I was traveling. And that sticks with me. But that was a sacrifice that I made. Now, I made up for it, to him when I got home, but that was the reality of what I had to do, again, to be where I am. And so what I really encourage anyone coming along in their career is you have to understand what's important to you. So if having this fantastic career is important to you, you're going to make sacrifices. It's going to impact your family. You need to know that. But what you need to make sure is that your family is with you on this journey. So they understand that sometimes, you can't stop to cook dinner. That may mean you need to get a food service. You can't clean the house. You need to get somebody to clean your house. So they've got to be with you on the journey and just deal with the reality of it. And then again, at the end of the day, what's the most important thing for me is that the reason I'm working the way I am is so that my family can have the lifestyle that I want them to have. So in the end, we all win. But there are sacrifices that you're going to make along the way, and there is no such thing as balance.
I think this one is very personal. And what I would want everyone listening to know is that just be honest with yourself about what balance means for you. And be honest with yourself about what trade-offs you think you're willing to make or not make based on our experiences of what you could potentially miss being on the other side of this. I can recall, and many of you know, I've worked at Intel for 25 years. I stayed in the same grade level for 9 years because it was an intentional choice. That was also the same period of time that I was inactive as a soror, because it was an intentional choice for me to focus on the parenting during my son's middle school years as a single mom. And I was willing to sacrifice my career for those 9 years to invest in him at that time. So I think there is no right or wrong answer, except for what resides inside of you. And there are times where you can go at it hard. There may be times where you have to pull back. When my sister was diagnosed with cancer, that was another opportunity that I pulled back. So I think you just have to know what works for you and be true with yourself. So when you lay down at night and sleep, you can be at peace because you made the best of the choices that you could.
Absolutely.
Let me make
I
one
think
more-
that's well said, both of you. That's what I would define, Sonia or Barbara, as those non-negotiables, and it is very personal. But I think underlying all of this is our mental health. And that if balance equates to anything, it has to equate to mental health. Because working harder doesn't guarantee success either. It's not always the one that's working 12-hour
That's
day
right.
that is the one that's looked upon as high potential. It's really working smarter.
That's
It is
right.
prioritizing what's important to you. Is getting those bottom line results. And so ensuring that your mental health, your physical health is in check. That has to be foundational to everything. Because guess what? If something happens to you, I guarantee you they already have your replacement in mind.
Amen.
They'll start Monday.
Amen. I have to make one more point, because when I started with Wells Fargo, I had a head full of hair like so were Sonya and so were Barbara. And after 17, 16 years, here you go. So, you do have to figure out what's important, because again, it's stress, right? What we do, there's stress in it, and you do have to figure out what works for you.
Absolutely.
I think that several times you've said over and over that there are seasons, and knowing what to do in a season. And you've also referred to your spiritual time to help you make decisions. I want to really push you a little bit in terms of, have you dealt with setbacks? And how do you avoid them if you can? And if they do show up in your life, how do you work your way through them? So Barbara, give us a lead on that. And then I want to hear from everyone, because I can't imagine that all of us have not had some setback in our professional career.
Oh, no. I think as you grow through the setbacks and the thinking of the setbacks, you begin to embrace them because you know you're going to learn something from it while you're in the middle of it. I fully recognize, though, that doesn't happen in most cases when we're going through those things. So a couple things, setbacks for me, I'm governed by my faith. I just have a strong faith in God that He knows where I need to be, who I need to be in the room with, and He's ahead of me. We are His workmanship. We are uniquely designed in His workmanship, and through Him painting us to be the best that we can be. When I had setbacks, and I have them probably every week, to be honest with you, because you have to understand, I work in inclusion and diversity. So, and what happens in society steps right inside to these corporate spaces. So every day I'm dealing with something from one of the stakeholders that I'm obligated to serve. And typically what I do in terms of a practice is I try and slow myself down to say, what am I supposed to learn out of this? Who can help me get through this setback? I personally have a coach. I've been paying for a coach out of my own pocket for about 7 years now. And I do that because I want to, yes, the company could pay for it in many cases, and they have, but I want to be holding myself accountable to making sure that I show up for those sessions. So typically, if I'm in a sticky setback, I'll sit and have a conversation with my coach to do a from and a to really think through where we are versus where we need to be and how to overcome that. And so that's how I tend to approach setback. I don't see them as a nasty, gnarly thing anymore. I see them as part of the business. And I think that's, to Florence's point, it's a part of the work that we do. Inclusion and diversity is not defined, and it's not rigid and structured. It's a live lab, and something is happening every day. So you have to approach these with like curiosity, and that includes the setbacks.
Right. And Sonya, as you approach this in your response, can you also talk a little bit about how we manage attitudes through this process of dealing with setbacks as well?
Yeah. Very similar to what Sora Barbara was saying, actually, very similar. I think you have to really take some time to self-reflect. And I always first start with me. And it's sometimes hard because the first thing you want to say is you want to blame someone else. But if you start with yourself and truly self-reflect on what could I have done differently to get a different result. And then it's so important to have a very trusted network of friends within your industry and outside of your industry that will be very honest with you. And I consider everyone on this panel part of my close network. And that person isn't the person you go to that will tell you that everything is wonderful and you're amazing and you're smart. That person is the person that will go to and say, you messed up. You did, you messed up. But let's talk about together how maybe you can fix it. Like that's how the coach serves that purpose for you, Sora Barbara. I've had coaches in the past, but I have a trusted group of colleagues that will tell me the truth. And I think that's so important. So you do self-reflection, but you also use your trusted resources around you as well to put yourself in check.
I have quite a number of setbacks, but they've been my setup for my comeback. So that's the way I view them. I've been in, and I'm gonna pivot on what Sonia Barbara said about her faith. I mean this when I say I may forget to bring God to work, but He doesn't forget to come. Right? We go through so many different types of situations at work, things that we can't even begin to anticipate. And if we didn't have His grace and His hedge of protection, I don't think we would be successful. So when I am in, what feels like a storm, I know I'm in it for a reason, right? And I know that I have to continue to be true to who I am as a person, which means I'm going to deliver a quality product. I'm going to make sure that I'm taking care of my team. And that as I work my way through this, I'm going to come out on the other side better. So while I don't like having difficult situations at work, that's just a part of work. And so I just have to lean on God when I'm going through those things. And I'll leave it there because He is my all in all. And I wouldn't be where I am truly without Him.
I just think that you all are sharing such intimate spiritual details that help us overcome. And that's the term I want to use because I can even remember a situation where I didn't do something well and there just wasn't a hole deep enough for me to crawl in. And it meant so much to have a friend pick up the phone and call and said, no, you're coming out of that hole because I'm coming to get you. And that's what I think that you all are showing in terms of this network you're in the workplace and in your community network.
Eula, one quick thing that I think we just need to really hone in on, and both Sonya and Florence brought it up. When you're in a setback, don't ignore it. Because I'm on the HR capacity, so many employees come post the point of being able to fix it because they failed to acknowledge the setback earlier. So I would just want you to really, when you hit that setback, to acknowledge it and become very actionable about how to move it forward. Because far too many get to the network that Sonya was talking about, and they only invest in that network when they have a need. You should be investing in that network before you have the need and stay on top of the challenge while it is still yet solvable.
That's very critical because I think that helps with that belief in self and your faith and keeping you encouraged. Thank you. I want to really kind of personalize it for us Black women too, and in our African-American family. Because we hear a lot about Black Lives Matter. And all of you, as I have certainly been, in positions where it meant a lot to see some Black people in the workplace. So what are you doing in terms of your job responsibilities? How are you serving in your heart that Black Lives Matter concept?
Well, that's my full-time job. So I show up on that every day. But some of the specifics are, obviously, I'm tracking representation to make sure that what is represented in the marketplace is also represented inside Apple. But it's not enough to get the talent in the door. We have to nurture the talent, grow the talent. We have to make sure that we're progressing the talent as well. So the other thing that I'm looking at, and I hope all industries are also doing this as well, is I do look at promotion parity. I do look at pay parity. And I think we just need to get some context for the industry that I'm in. So we know women represent 50% of the workforce. Yet we know in tech, they're about 30%. And then if I take that down to Black women, that's 2%. And if I take that to Black women leadership, it's less than 1% at most tech companies. So in most tech spaces, you will know the Black women on a name by name basis. And so what I personally try and do is make those connections by way of an employee resource group so that each of those women have a personal connection to someone that is either mentoring or sponsoring their careers so that they don't get stuck into these talent and people systems where we know we can get stuck. So it's my full-time gig, and I enjoy it, but it can be a pain sometimes, but it's what we're purposed to do, is to pay this work forward, because there was somebody that was invested in our careers and saw something in us that we didn't see. And so it's our obligation also to pay that forward.
Yeah, you have to make yourself available. It's not my day job at all. But one thing that is really important to me is availability. Because if you don't make yourself available to younger women, men, whomever, right, coming along in their career, you're not giving back, right? And so for me, it's also being intentional about your hiring. Not intentional that you have someone Black in your interview pool, but that you actually hire someone out of that interview pool. Because we oftentimes will, we want to make sure we're our candidate pool is diverse, but you're not making offers to those individuals. So you have to be very intentional about hiring Black people. You have to be intentional about actually introducing them to your network, right? I've been at the company, as I said, 16, almost 17 years. So I know a lot of people. And so one of the things I spend a lot of time doing is doing informational interviews with individuals and then started to introduce them to my network. And we just keep that going. So that way they get greater exposure. So you have to be very intentional about what you can do. I'm being honest, I can't do it all, but what I can do is make myself available, be intentional about actually hiring Black people, and also expanding their networks through my network. So that's what I do.
If I could just add on to what you just said, Florence, because it's an extremely important point. First, I have to say this is a priority for me, and it's been a priority prior to the murder of George Floyd last summer.
That's right.
It's been a priority for me since I was blessed to be placed in a leadership position of influence. It is a priority for me, and it should be a priority for everyone who looks like me, but it should be a priority for everyone. Because if you think about it, there's only 4% of African Americans in the United States that are at a VP level, 4%. So those are the ones that are making decisions, hiring decisions. And so we can't do it alone. We have to, what you said, Florence, we have to build and establish these networks of exposure for this talent that's coming in. And so we talk about the fact that we have an obligation to mentor, serve as coaches. We have an obligation also to serve as sponsors and push our colleagues that don't necessarily look like us to also serve as sponsors, because we need someone at the table when no one else is around, serving as a billboard for talent of color. And it just can't be us because it's not enough of us. And so we have to influence a different change. I think it was Denise Thomas. Denise Thomas is an African-American business coach. And she said, it's very important that you have three things. You have a coach, you have a mentor, and you have a sponsor. Coaches speak to you, mentors speak with you, and sponsors speak for you. And so in mentoring and connecting with talent, people of color, I always push them, this is your obligation. This is what you have to do. Because if you cannot be naive enough to think that the work you do will speak for you. It's not that alone. So you have to use your voice, and you have to establish a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor, and you have to build those relationships.
And I think to add to that too, Sonya, is that sponsorship happens through socialization, right? So we have to get comfortable now once COVID is over, but we have to get comfortable understanding that we have to socialize with our colleagues, because that's when they really get to know us as individuals and they take an interest in us. So to Sonia's point, it's not always the fact that you're working 12 hours a day. It's when you travel and you go down to the bar with them, or you go have dinner with them, where they get to know you on a personal level. So that's really important.
So as I know it's hard to believe, but we've been nearly talking and listening for an hour. And there's just so much more information that I want to cover with you. But I need you to just imagine for a moment that you have the daughters at your knees, and they're looking at you with just these huge loving eyes, wanting to know the secret. What advice now do you give our young daughters? Because they're going to follow in your footprints. And so let that be your closing statement, and then we will close. So Barbara, we'll start with you, and we'll just move to Florence and close out with you, Sonia. What do you say to your daughters?
Yeah, so I would say I'm gonna put this in the atmosphere since my son is married, to my granddaughter. I would say to her, baby, you matter. And just always know that no matter what you're going through, that you truly matter. And as you enter into the corporate space, I would say, baby, know your value, but then add taxes.
You matter.
I'm going to say, know what's important to you, right? Understand why it's important to you, pursue it, and then ask God to come along on your journey, because you will need him.
Amen.
Well, I do have a daughter. So I hope that I have instilled in her this level of confidence for her to pursue whatever her heart so desires, and never be intimidated by anyone. Know your worth. Always lead with the foundation of faith, but be prepared. Be overly prepared for what life brings your way.
Soros, thank you so very much. I can't believe that I'm at 72, nearly 73. This has probably been one of the most positive learning experiences. Number one, to share it with beautiful women that I admire and love, but to share it with women that I can learn from. And I think that you've also helped us to see this afternoon that no matter what, there's an opportunity to learn. So thank you so very much. So as I speak to our DBO Soros, we've had an opportunity to listen and share with our own Delta Beta Omega chapters phenomenal soror leaders who have persevered, strategized, and ultimately making their way to the very top. And we congratulate you, and we pray for you, and we honor you. So on behalf of our bacillus, Madam Sean Gear, we thank you for your attendance and participation this afternoon. We especially thank the leadership of our retreat chair, Soror Joan Sherwood. You're paving the way, sorors, for many of our African-American young women who aspire to greatness and strive to be senior leaders in their organizations. So a very special thank you to Barbara, Florence, and Sonia for your continued membership, encouragement, and for being change agents, and for your can-do attitudes. We understand that you have shared with us the power of no, but you never said that you could not do. And we appreciate that. You're an inspiration for all to learn from, and we're grateful for the journey that you've shared with us. So thank you for joining with us today, and we're looking forward to seeing you during the remainder of the retreat activities. And so we end this particular part of our retreat discussion this afternoon, and it's filled with virtual hugs to each one who has participated. Thank you, Soros. Thank you so very much. May God bless you. God's love. Thank you.